We are on air. So, I don't know if anybody else was able to read the directions. They were far down there, but it just says we need to go for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and that we all need to introduce ourselves. And I don't know if we necessarily need to read our papers, but I think we just need to expand upon our thoughts on the questions.
Yeah, that's what I understood too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't even have my paper ready anyway, so.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, we can just go, I guess we can just go through the questions, but first I guess we just need to introduce ourselves and like say our names. So I am Maddie Darnell.
I'm Janae Castillo.
Sorry. Oh, we always do it at the same time!
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm Janae Castillo.
Okay. Let's see.
All right, and then Andrea, did you say your name?
Yes, I did. Did you not hear me?
No, I didn't hear you. That's okay.
I'm Andrea Muse.
I just wanted to make sure your name was on there. Okay, awesome. So I guess we'll just like go through the questions and talk about the movie.
Were you able to watch it, Andrea?
Yes.
Okay.
It was long. Wow.
That's what I was just telling Danae. I was like, that is a long movie. It was 2 hours. I think it was a tweet bit over 2 hours. So
I had never seen it before. Had you guys seen it before?
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
but it was,
I've never even heard of it.
I'd never even heard of it either. And there were popular actors in there. It was Benedict Cumberbatch. Like he's a pretty popular actor.
Yeah, I never.
Yeah, I mean he's popular.
Yeah,
he is. I think he's opening Christmas gifts too. Anyhow, so question number 1 was what doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate, and why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent?
Do you want me to tell you what I wrote?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so number 1, before I tell you about my answers, I did watch the movie. I'm not very good at comprehending movies, so some of my answers, I have a hard time, like that's my weakness actually, is watching movies and then comprehending and being able to answer questions. So I'm like, oh man. But anyway, I tried my best. So
good.
This is what I wrote. I feel like his love for the African people who are not being treated well. I think that the desire to stand up for what was right was deeply ingrained in his heart and soul. He really wanted to do the right thing, and he knew that he would have to stand up and defend the right thing since it was not a popular right thing during the time. The doctrine of the family not only needs to be planted deeply within our hearts, but also needs to be shown in our lives. I think if the doctrine of the family is not planted in our hearts, we will be persuaded by powers of the adversary to go against the doctrine of the family. We must be willing and ready to fight and protect the truth.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that completely. I think that was another thing like that I wrote down too, was that what what drove him to kind of advocate was that he really wanted all lives to be considered as equal. So like that was really big on him. I think he mentioned it times throughout the movie, in that he believed really, really strongly that slavery should be abolished, so much so that he kind of forgoed his own physical health. Like I think he said in there that he had colitis, which is just inflammation of your colon. But at the time when they don't have modern medicine, there's not much that they can do to take care of it.
Yes.
So, he's probably in a lot of pain. And so, he's still going about giving speeches, trying to help people and things like that. And so I think that's part of what I mentioned in mine, and that, he was very close with the Lord, and he kind of found that the more as he gave the speeches, and because he was raised by a monk. Yeah.
So I think what I really liked, I liked the part where he really was relying, like he started kind of recognizing like God and how much like that really drove him. I think it drove him more to do what was right, and he started realizing like there's more to all of this, you know, like there's more to just politics and like the mess that it all gives and all brings. And so I think that was a big thing also that drove him to advocate, was just like feeling like, hey, there's a higher power, like there's something here. And so, and I also agree with everything else that you guys said. I think he was really passionate about slavery and how all of that was impacting the people there in Africa. And so I think we were able to really see like that it really affected him. Like, you know, he really wanted to help these people, and so he really portrayed that in his drive to advocate. So
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else have anything to add on that one? No? Okay. So number 2,
I just kind of thought it was like, I think your end, because after I speak later for you, yours, Danae, I think I am on Maddie's.
What?
You're picking up on mine.
After I speak, I think it comes in like later than when I'm actually
Right this second, yes, you are delayed.
And it's at least for me, it's you're like really like lagging and.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, can you hear? Huh, that's so weird. I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi. Are you better now?
A little bit.
Maybe. Hold on, let me see if I can figure it out.
It's a little bit better now.
Go on. That's fine. Okay.
Okay, we'll try it.
You can go on to the next question. That's fine.
All right, we'll try it. So number 2 was a little bit tougher for me because I studied the Bronfenbrenner approach in another class, and I wasn't sure, and I had to go back in my notes a little bit, so I don't necessarily know if I did this correctly because, again, we did this in another class. So I think it was like the macro, exo, meso, micro system. Awesome. Glad you guys agree. So that's what I did, and then I just applied it in kind of weird ways. So I just said for macro, that he brought in research which kind of helped benefit everybody, because then he was able to translate that to Parliament, who was able to like spread it to a bigger crowd of people. And then for EXO, I said he helped, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this name, Yusu Ndur, the former slave, read a book. And by doing that, he was able to get the word out from a direct source of how slavery affects certain people. And then for Meso, I said that he was able to share views with people like Lord Fox, and so he's able to kind of interact it again with Parliament. And then with Micro, I just said that he was able to develop a team of people to help him carry out abolishment, and he was able to bring the team of people from different backgrounds, so they gave different viewpoints on the issue.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
I only stuff kind of self-explanatory if you look at macro, exo, whatever, meso. Anyway, it's kind of the same thing. I put he, shared his thoughts or research opinions with the community and politically, and then he shared, I don't know what you call him, but like, remember in the scene where it's like his butler or servant or whatever who was like, hey, you have someone who wants to eat, can I let them in or whatever? And so he kind of explained to him how he was connected to God and all this stuff. Anyway, that's kind of my exosystem. And then when he visited, I don't remember his name, but he was mopping floors.
John.
Yes. And he talked to him about his great mission that he needed to accomplish. Meso, and then micro is when he talked, I don't remember her name either, but his future wife, when he talked to her about his ideas and hopes and what he could accomplish.
I think her name was Barbara. I could be wrong.
Barbara.
I think it was.
I put his future wife. I hope that's okay. Anyway, but that was kind of more personal, like very intimate.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that's what, anyway, that's kind of what I put.
Yeah. No, I think that works really well.
I haven't done that question, but good job, guys.
Hopefully that gives you like some ideas for yours, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a tough time with that one just because I feel like I don't have as great of an understanding on Brenner, even though I've done it now in 2 classes. But
yeah, that was kind of tough because you have to be a little more specific and like
yeah, definitely,
scenes and specific people and
connections and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Right. So for number 3, it was how did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research, and what evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence?
I had kind of a tough time with this question. I'm going to have to go back and edit my paper and talk about the evidence because I don't remember that very well. It's something that kind of slipped over when I was watching the movie. But I mean, they talked politically in groups. I don't know what you call them, in speeches and what
I had to
it?
rewind the smaller groups, like their little parliament systems.
Yeah, that kind of. That's that, you know, and they would have, I don't know, speeches back and forth about who is right, and then they'd have people stand up and disagree and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know what that formally is called, but I know there's a word for it. I just don't know.
There's a word.
Yeah, like the judicial word, but I have no idea what it is. I had to rewind so many different times to get accurate numbers for these, but I just wrote about how like he went over a year, or he went through the course of a year and had all of his team gather signatures of people who agreed that slavery was a good idea, and it ended up being 390,000 signatures.
Yeah, I remember that now.
That was a tough one. I had to rewind a lot to get that one. And then they provided evidence to the book that was written by the former slave Yasu Ndur, and they sold 50,000 copies within 2 months. They showed the slave ship the Madagascar, in which 400 slave lives were lost. That took me like 20 minutes to get that number.
Yes, I remember that too. I don't remember exact numbers, but I remember him talking about it.
Yeah, for some reason, I just really wanted accurate numbers, and that took me a really long time to get them. James, the group secretary, like his little small group secretary, spent time collecting figures and statistics regarding slaves who were tried or convicted of crimes they did not commit. So he collected information on the slaves that were being mistreated and bring that information back to Parliament. So that's what I wrote for number 3. I spent a long time on that question.
Yeah, that is a hard question.
Yeah, it was a tough one.
I think, because like the past few meetings that we've had, like talking together, like about advocacy and all that, and like what we can do and things like that, and how like we've kind of been like having like different discussions about what we can do, and how like sometimes we feel that we can't do much. And I feel that he's a really good example of just like persistence, and how I feel like he just, I don't know, he was just like we talked about in the beginning, like he was just so passionate, he was persistent on what he believed was good enough to advocate for. And obviously in the end, you know, there was a huge positive result. And so I think his persistence was really inspiring for me. in providing the research, you know, like all those numbers. Like, can you imagine, you know, Maddie, you're able to get that from the movie, but can you imagine like having to actually get that kind of research?
Yeah, no, I can't.
To
Almost
provide it.
people, yeah, no.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think
that's amazing.
that's a really good example of just like persistence and stuff. So
yeah, I think in the first question she asked me like, how can you be persistent and passionate, or like, why is it so important to have that? And I think that's a really good example that you were talking about with like just him in general being persistent and passionate. Just it helps you want to go out there and advocate for good. But yeah, no, I agree.
Happy birthday. Brooks.
sorry.
It's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that would be a lot of work.
Yeah, I can't imagine like spending a course of a year just going
I
about.
just think how hard it is to get references for a job. You know how annoying that is? You know what I'm saying? You're like, this is so annoying. You have to go and find 4 different people or write down different bosses, different people in your life that you know to get a reference, and it takes forever. It's the most annoying part about applying jobs. And think about if you had to get that many like signatures or a reference to, hey, this many people are signing this piece of paper saying that they agree.
Well, even just like references for a paper. Like I know how upset, or not upset, but like frustrated we were when we were writing our research papers, and we were like, we can't get references, and they actually had to go do like all the legwork, that information. Imagine if we had to do that and spend to write a research paper.
Right.
Yeah, that would not be fun. But yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Number 4 was one. It was talking about how like the film portrays the importance of working together as a group. And they were asking, what has family advocacy group work taught you? Discuss your thoughts with your peers each week in the HOA meetings.
So I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about this. Was that I feel like, anyway, I hate to reference this to a spiritual term, but I'm going to anyway. You know when you like go to testimony meeting and you like everyone shares their testimonies, and then you just kind of feel like uplifted after that experience, like, oh wow, this person had this experience and this, and you just feel like there's something about it that's powerful. I feel like the same thing is when you're in a group setting and people are sharing their experiences and their thoughts and their opinions about something that you all as a whole agree on. There's something that is powerful about that. And then the other thing that I wrote was that I feel like when you're in a group, you can get, you easily can access feedback. So if you say, hey, I have this opinion or this thought or this idea about such and such, then someone can say like, well, that's a good idea, but I think you should do this, or I think you should do this. So when you're in a group or committee or whatever, I think you put multiple brains together and you come up with the best solution or the best idea. Sometimes on your own, there might be something that you're missing, but with someone else together, it makes it whole and better. Anyway, that was my thoughts.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wrote. Like even just going along with like what I said about his group, like when you meet in an HOA, you have so many different people that have so many different opinions. And that's what can kind of be nice because we all bring a different viewpoint on something.
Right.
And so at least when I go into an HOA, it's really nice because like I think of one way and like you're gonna think of another way. And it helps me to be like, oh, well, like I can add that to the what I'm thinking, or that gives me a new thought process on something. And it's always nice to like see something from someone else's point of view, which is why I like it.
Yeah. I think going along with what Andrea said, like about like the spiritual part, like if you think about like when we receive answers, sometimes we receive answers through other people. And so I think, you know, we just need other people, you know, we just need the assistance of others, whether, you know, and maybe sometimes it's not so much like, oh, we need them because we need them to like to help me or give me this or give me that, but maybe it's just that support, you know, like maybe that's just that companionship of a family member or something that you just need them to show that, hey, you know, I'm supporting you or whatever. So I think being able to just like discuss things like this, and especially like positive things, I feel like this class is has been like one of the biggest positive classes, and so being able to discuss something positive also helps with, you know, not having contention and things like that. Like, yeah, we have our different outlooks and things, but it's all about like the same good principle, I guess. So
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's good. The next one is just asking, so I don't know if we're supposed to go over all of these because we're gonna run out of time if we do. So, because there's 11 questions and right now we're on number 5. So should I like,
just
should I do
go, I would say just go through them and then point where we have to stop. That's fine.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's do that. Just the next one is, what parallels do you see between Wilbur and Captain Moroni and Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify? How can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices?
let me pull up Alma 46 first.
I always have a hard time like relating things to scriptures, so mine may not make sense, but I just said it can kind of be related to verse 8, which is, thus we see how quick the children of men do forget the Lord their God, yea, how quick to do iniquity and be led away by the evil one. So I just compared it to the fact that it seemed as if they had a really evil presence over them, especially when they were fighting so hard against, well, obviously Wilbur didn't, but Parliament did when they had to fight so hard against basic human right, basically. And yeah, that's basically what I said for that one.
Yeah, I kind of wrote, I don't know how awesome this makes sense either, but like Maddie said, I have a hard time relating to scripture as well. But I think a comparison between them and scripture is that I feel like Wilbur really used revelation in a sense, in a different way than when we use revelation, but he really sought out guidance to help the people who had fallen away or who were disagreeing with him or who were angry towards him or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of what a Christian and professional family advocate does, is in every situation that they're in, they seek out guidance or revelation, even if it's just for a moment. Like, hey, I'm in this silent prayer. I'm in this, discussion with this person and it's not going well. Please just direct it to go in a peaceful manner. I mean, it's just an example, but I feel like that's something he really did. And then the other thing that I think relates to both Moroni and Wilbur is that I think that we have to have strength from God to really be effective in our approach to fight against the loud voices. I think Wilbur was a great example of that. Moroni is a great example of that. And you find in the world people who are the best advocates. I think of Jeffrey Earl Holland, like fire, right? But at the same time, he's like cool about it and not just super overbearing. So I think if you have God's help, then it just works out. And that's what I learned from both of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I also apologize for my dogs jumping around in the background.
I kind of just had like a aha moment. I don't know why it took me this long, but like obviously like we've been kind of like comparing like the gospel and things to like advocacy, and like we've been reading like talks from like the apostles like in today's time in this dispensation. But as I was I was going back right now, like reading like the heading of FAML460, and I don't know why it just kind of like popped into my head, but I'm like, whoa, like Moroni is an advocate, like Nephi is an advocate, like how I don't know, it was just interesting, like all of a sudden like I just see them in a different kind of way, how they use advocacy in whether big ways or small ways, whether to help or compel a large group of people or a small group of people or everyone in the entire world who is reading the Book of Mormon, you know. But I think that's an example of just like how big advocacy can get and how impactful it can get. And as far as like being Christ-like, against like loud and degrading voices, I think that just not having the spirit of contention is what will help us in the end. Like if we're doing it for the right reasons, if we're doing it, you know, to help others, then I don't think we should have to worry about the loud voices, because if we know what we're saying is true and what we believe in is true and what we're advocating is true, then there should be no worry, kind of like what Andrea was saying.
I think that's a really, really good point. I never thought of it that way, especially the more we've learned about like advocacy and everything like that. There's so many good examples in the Book of Mormon of advocates. Now that I think about it, really good example. Okay, number 6. So this one was about Marcia Barlow. So it says Marcia Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbur and others exemplify any of Marcia's ideas, and how so?
I think you find it in every movie and every story. It's just like they always share something from their life, personal, that tries to trigger someone else's emotional response. Like, I don't know, I just feel like if you talk like, yeah, there's X amount of slaves, and you're like, okay. But if you're like, yeah, these slaves and this is what happened to them. I don't remember. They were in this small little group, and that one slave showed what happened to him so that he knows that he's like not American or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just proof. That's like a really great example of showing something that's personal, that has impacted his life. And that's just a simple way of kind of going along with her persuasive and speaking and writing or whatever. And then he also, like we talked about earlier, used the research about, hey, I got 39 whatever thousand people to, 3,900 people to sign this document saying that they are against slavery. And that's another way. It's just kind of like, I guess, documentation and research, also using personal experience, and then just speaking in kind of in a way of persuasion and a way of compelling people to believe what you have to say.
Yeah. I had to go back and I had to rewatch Marcia's video because I didn't really remember it, but it was all about how like using stories is stories in quotation. Using stories is helpful to persuade your listener. So yeah, I completely agree with you where you're saying like when he like opened his shirt and he was like showing the marks on his chest, like that helped to kind of tell his story and draw you in as like a viewer and a listener, and kind of like feel his pain. And then I feel like I've mentioned this so much throughout my paper where like the former slave wrote his book. I feel like that also helped too. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we've been also talking a lot about the way that we talk like persuasively and things like that. And I think he had a way of talking that it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't harsh, but it wasn't like soft spoken either. Like it was just the way that he spoke that it really like compelled people. So I think that really helped a lot with his persuasion.
Yeah, definitely. This one is a long question. Number 7 is because you have to answer like every piece of it. But it was, what role did government policy and religious freedom play in the fight of the slave trade? Did you see their political system being pro-family? Why or why not? Answer all the questions. I said that I did not personally see the political system as being pro-family, just with the way that they knew how slave families were being treated, and they still fought for them to continue the slave trade, with the way that Parliament acted towards it. They made him Wilbur jump through a ton of different hoops to get it abolished. No, I didn't think they were pro-family.
Yeah, I don't think they're pro-family, but I think it's interesting that the people who weren't slaves were very like a lot of them were married that I saw in the video.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the film, it's like maybe they weren't pro-family, but they were definitely pro-marriage in some aspects because everybody was married, and it was just like the thing to do there. You get married.
Yeah, I think it was also the time because, like when she in the very beginning, when his like now wife was sitting with his friend's wife, she was like, "We're looking for a wife for him," or like, "You aren't married yet."
Right.
Frowned upon to not be married.
Right. It's almost like you are healthier, and like he said in the video, marriage makes you healthy or whatever. I don't remember who was that comment, but it's almost like in that society and in that time, you were seen as higher and more respected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're almost like a spinster if you're not married.
Right. So I do think that they were pro-marriage, for sure. And I had a hard time answering this question, honestly. What role does government policy and religious freedom play? And I haven't 100%. I'm going to have to go back and revamp it and finish it, but I don't know. I feel like they had quite a
role.
What?
I feel like government and policy played a similar role. Because
I think so too.
Yeah,
because they all were like able to speak up. Like I didn't feel like there was like someone dictating everything that someone said. Like you cannot say that, or you will. You know, there was not a lot of control.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people were able to say and do as they wanted.
Yeah, they definitely
in an aspect of things. So I feel like there's quite a bit of kind of freedom to do in that sense. Not for the slaves, obviously, but for the other people who were able to speak in political situations. They didn't
like the Parliament
stray away from saying certain things. You know, he was just like, this needs to end. Like, and I have a right to say it, and I'm going to find all these other people who have a right to speak up, and it's going to end, you know, like.
Yeah, it seemed like the higher class definitely had like more of a role in the government, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, that's just my thought.
No, I agree with you.
I haven't answered that question yet, so good job again.
That's okay. It's a long question. It took me a while because I was like, the government and the policy, they seem to play a really similar role. So I feel like you'd really have to look at judicial system.
Yeah, not my favorite topic.
But I thought it was interesting that I don't really remember. Maybe they did, but I don't remember a lot talking about religion or government or policy. He did. I mean, he was very like talking about God and whatever, but like no one else hardly mentioned it. So I was like, this question, I don't know if I have the information to answer it correctly, but
it was a strange question. With religious freedom, it was weird because trying to think of what I said. Well, I mean, I guess like they had religious freedom, like no one was telling them like you can't do this, you can't do that with religion. Anything else, like
this wasn't really talked about. I think that's what it was like. One of those things, just like behind the scenes. Like you can see it, I guess, if you really look, but it wasn't spoken of, you know.
I agree. I liked the next question a lot better. Do you feel that Wilbur used time on Earth well? How do you see him showing the elements of consecration that Elder Christopherson spoke about?
I mean, go ahead, Danae. You were going to speak.
No, go ahead.
Hold on. I went to the wrong question. Let me see what I wrote. Yeah, I mean, obviously he used his time very well, I thought. I didn't, like, what else could he have done? Daggone, he used his whole life to advocate against slavery and, like, my goodness. So I wrote that, yes, I think he had a purpose and he went after it. His life was super difficult at times. Like you said, he was sick and he was just running himself to the grave practically. But I feel like he did really well with all the pressure that he had around him through political leaders and through friends and people saying, hey, you know, go this way, oh, go this way. You can advocate for God or advocate for against slavery. And there's just kind of all this stuff happening. And then I think he really, I think where where Elder Christopherson's talk comes into play anyway, I think he really understood the importance of spiritual connection and accomplishing his purpose and defending those who were suffering. So he understood that he was sent to Earth to do something specific and special, and he sought after it and was like wanting to know what it was and wanted to be guided by God. So I feel like he was very consecrated. How do you say it? Consecration through that process.
I had to rewatch again Elder Christopherson's talk about consecration, and he said that there are like 5 or 6 elements that make up the elements of consecration, and it was like purity, work, service, and integrity. And I just explained basically how like I thought Wilbur exhibited all of those things pretty well, because he fed the poor and he stuck up for those that were less fortunate, because anytime anybody needed food, like you saw, like I think it was his butler, whoever it was, came out knocking at the back door, and he was like, feed him breakfast. And then he came in to tell his cook, and he was like, looks like people will be here for dinner, and she runs away crying, and it's because there's like 20 people in his room and he's feeding them. So he was never shy of committing acts of service, and he was very selfless. So it's kind of what I wrote about.
I think consecration is kind of a big word in the sense of like in the gospel and everything, like no one can really, I heard that no one can truly, like no one is truly consecrated, only I believe the prophet and like some of his, I don't know if it's some or all of the apostles, I'm not sure, because being consecrated is like a really, really like big thing to do. But in the sense of like this and like this topic and the movie and everything, I really do feel that he used his time well on Earth, and he did consecrate the best of, I guess, his knowledge, if that makes sense. Because obviously, you know, wasn't like LDS member or stuff like that, and he doesn't have like the full knowledge of like everything. But with what he did know, I think he really was a good example of just showing that. So
yeah, definitely. The next one was any other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that are related to child and family advocacy. And I feel like we kind of already answered that in a way. We talked a little bit about advocacy, but if there's anything else anybody wants to talk about, we can.
I thought it was interesting at the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, where they had gotten married, and then it's just kind of this weird scene where his wife was like talking about being pregnant or having a baby or whatever, and then
he's like on the ground.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too.
I was like, what the heck? But she made a comment about that we'll have a son or a daughter, and then a daughter, and then a son, and then a daughter, and then a son, and she just like never ended it. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, that was a very
right. But the purpose that I kind of thought, I was like, wow, like it's interesting as in today's world, as family kind of decays or people think that it's not important or whatever, how you don't hardly hear people like talk about having large families or families at all, or they're trying to find every way they can to not have a kid. You know what I'm saying? It's very common in the world. And it's hard to see that in church because we're very family oriented. But if you go outside of it, like I know I had people in theater who are now married and whatever, and they're like, we don't want kids. You know, it's just interesting to see. And I feel like that was a really good advocacy and family point, is that we as Latter-day Saints can be like, we love children and they're a blessing, and we see the purpose of why we have kids in our lives, you know. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I didn't think about that. I just thought it was a very strange scene, and I was like, what's going on? Dying? I couldn't tell. But yeah, I liked that. Let's see. Number 10 was, what was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed?
I don't think I necessarily like understood it less at the beginning than I do now, but I feel that the importance of it is a little bit stronger. I think I don't think, I mean, obviously, I learned more about the doctrine of the family and things like that, but as far as like the whole understanding of it, I don't think it necessarily changed, but the importance, me personally, it's changed for me, like how important it is. So
yeah,
I agree. I think, oh my goodness, I feel like I've taken so many family classes and they're all very similar, and you get them all confused, and you're like, what the heck? This is the same stuff I've already learned once. Anyway, I feel like the doctrine of the family is ingrained at Burrito. I mean, it's just like bam, bam, bam in these classes. So I don't feel like it's changed. I feel like I've known it all along. Like, okay, yeah, this is what I saw last semester. I understand the proclamation and all these different things. I think what changed maybe this semester is that I've learned how to be a better advocate. I kind of have a hard time in that aspect of things, and I feel like this class has been really, really specific on how we can be advocates. And so I think, and I've known the doctrine, but understanding how I can approach advocating for family and marriage has grown better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that what I've mostly learned in this class is that, how I can apply the doctrine of the family to be an advocate. And I think that is what I think is the most important thing I've learned. Between that and like how I can be a better advocate in certain areas of my life, like through the judicial system or through like different things like that, because like I never thought about how I could make an impact in government. And now I feel like I know how I could if it was something that interested me enough, or like things like that. But yeah, definitely know that. Okay, don't steal my sock. But then the last question is, picture your spouse and children, current or future, how, and write down some thoughts about how they will benefit from you taking this class.
I think that's kind of like a personal question, I guess. Like kind of like
it is. Yeah, I think it is. So I guess like if you guys want to share, you can, but you don't have to. I basically just talked about advocacy. Like I can be a better advocate.
That's kind of what I talked about. I just was like, and my kids about the importance of the home, and so I think this is what this class has helped you, me, you, whatever, us with, is the aspect of it all starts right here in the home, you and your spouse and your children, and that's where advocacy really plays the biggest part. And then after you are working on that, I feel like sometimes we get confused in the gospel and in life is we feel like, oh, working there, like this class has been really community focused. Community. Like, yeah, that's great and cool and amazing, and we need to do that. But also, I feel like we just have to focus on the home first. If you don't have it ingrained at home first and you go to the community, things are out of place. So I think it just all starts in right here in your life, in your home, in your family. Talk about it, have experiences, and then get outside of yourself and reach out to the community.
No, I agree.
Anyway.
But that was the last question. So unless you guys feel the need to speak about anything else, I think we are good.
Yep.
Okay, questions about this paper before we wrap up. So how are you formatting it? Are you just doing the question and like bold and then typing your answer underneath? And then
So you do bullet points. If you look at the main page, it tells you you do like the question and then you'll do like bullet point ideas. And she said the longer the thought, the better. It should be personal, but you want to expand on your thoughts. It should be about 5 to 6 bullet points
per question.
per question. Mm-hmm.
Is there like a reference page? Because I've looked, I haven't seen.
Yeah, so it's on that main page. So if
like the announcement page, or whatever.
Class, yeah, it's on the announcement page.
Okay, I'll look there because I've been kind of confused. I'm like, what am I supposed to do
there? So, yeah, that's where I found it.
Okay, because I have it written out, but I don't think it's.
Yeah, but then I just need to. I'm trying to figure out where I need to post like the link for our discussion. So
I think it said like the person who has the link when you submit your paper, like your document with all your answers, you post a link on the comments.
Okay, I already submitted my paper. So I can email it to her. She's usually very nice about stuff like that, and I'll just tell her.
Right. I just email it to her.
Yeah, I'll just say I didn't know. I already submitted it. So, and yeah, she's usually very good about stuff like that. So, yeah, I'll just make sure I get it emailed. But yeah, other than that, I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Good luck with finals. Hey, do you need to end it before we hang up? The live?
I have not stopped the broadcast, so we are still recording.
Do you need to stop the broadcast before we hang up, or will it? Oh, okay.